Now, how did the Jewish authorities respond to rumors that this young Jew was claiming that the Old Testament doesn't really have much authority, that God is not the creator, that God is actually nature, that he's not transcendent, he didn't create? I mean, these are ideas that would be truly upsetting, especially to those Jews who wanted to stay on good terms with the Protestants.
Well, that's exactly why they were so frightened of it. And of course, all the stuff the books that he published under a pseudonym and so on, that all that came later, after he was excommunicated.
Yeah, let's talk about the excommunication first.
But I think his ideas, why were the rabbis afraid of it? One is that it undermined their authority, and it could cause problems with the Protestants, which would have imperiled the life of Jews in Amsterdam. Those were two reasons. We don't know exactly, because a lot of it is still obscure, what happened at the time, and why the excommunication was so extremely harsh, because that kind of excommunication, called cherem, was not unusual. People were being sort of kicked out of the community all the time for all kinds of reasons, usually in milder terms, and then came back when they were sufficiently contrite. Spinoza's excommunication, or his ban, was not almost, it was a curse. And he was forbidden for ever speaking to another Jew, for example, including his own family. And
that's extraordinarily stringent. It seems
yes,
to me.
And so they were clearly very, very afraid of the consequences of what he was thinking. Now, it didn't bother Spinoza very much, because he apparently said, again, one cannot be sure, but he apparently said afterwards, well, they only did what I should have done myself, and so on and so forth. But I think it was the nature of his thinking that upset them. And they said to him at one point, again, one has to be a bit careful, but apparently he was told by his rabbis, look, the Jews are not Protestants. You don't have to wear your religion on your sleeve. You don't have to show the purity of your faith or anything like that. Just behave as a good Jew and don't spread these noxious ideas. In that case, you can stay in the community and we won't bother you. And that he wouldn't accept.
Mainly because he wasn't publishing. He was talking. He did a lot of talking.
He was talking, but he was an intellectual who wanted to express his ideas freely. And he was not about to say, I'll shut up. Shutting up was not in his nature.
Right. And that's absolutely clear. There were other excommunications that happened while he was there that struck me as incredibly severe, that he must have been aware of. Can you describe one of the moments where a leading figure that seemed to have crossed the Jewish authorities, what happened to them?
It was somebody he knew, whose name of course now escapes me, and who was a doubter, a skeptic, and not so much that he doubted the existence of God, but he had great doubts about the authority of the rabbis and what they were saying and so on, and said so. So he was also banned. But this is another reason why Spinoza was so extraordinary. Talking in modern terms of identity, which is not a word people would have used then, but to have an identity in the 17th century was basically to have a religious identity. That was your community, but more important than your nationality or anything like that. And to be cast out really put you in a very isolated and lonely position, which very few people would have been able to bear. And this friend of Spinoza's couldn't bear it and tried to go back. And they allowed him to come back, but you had to go through all kinds of very humiliating rituals. One was lying prostrate on the door of the synagogue, and people could stamp on you and spit on you and so on. And you had to show tremendous contrition and apologize and all that. And then you were allowed back in. Well, he did that once, and you couldn't stand it again. And then he left, and he did it once again. And I think it all ended very badly in a kind of suicide. And
Spinoza's watching this.
Spinoza knew this, but Spinoza was not frightened of being cast out because he had friends, he had fellow sort of dissenters who looked up to him.